In this video, I'm going to be making a very temporary table saw, and I'm going to be using this piece of 1/2-inch plywood I have here. I'm going to be reusing the 1/2-inch plywood though for a more permanent version of the table saw, and I'm going to be using this very temporary one to build that. And to get started on that, I'm going to cut 36 inches off the end of this sheet, and eventually I'll be reusing that. But for now, it's going to act as the top for this temporary saw. Now I can move the sawhorses and then put that piece that I cut on top to act as a kind of a temporary work table. That's probably the thing that I miss the most about my table saw. There's no table there for me to use anymore. So there are a couple things that I want to do with the circular saw to make it more suitable for what I'm going to be using it for here. I'm looking at this as kind of a semi-permanent type installation. So I'm going to be a little bit destructive with it, but not to the point where it's not usable as a circular saw again. Just some parts would have to be added back in. I'm going to take off the blade first, and then I'm going to take off the blade guard itself. And then because this is going to be mounted underneath a table and the upper blade guard is not removable on this saw, I'm going to cut part of it away so that the sawdust from using it as a table saw will have a better path to escape and it won't get hung up inside the upper blade guard. Now obviously this is a fairly new saw, but it wasn't an overly expensive one. And I do have another saw that I like using better than this one, so not much of a sacrifice actually. And now with that out of the way, I can put the blade back on, but I'm not going to put on the same one that was on the saw to begin with. I'm going to put on one that's a lot better. The next semi-destructive thing to do is to drill some holes in the shoe, and that's the base of the saw, and those will make it easier for me to screw it down to the plywood. And then once again, they really don't affect the usability of the saw afterwards. So if you didn't go to the extreme length of busting off the upper guard like I did, drilling holes in the base like this is perfectly fine. And with the saw secured in place, I'll check to make sure that the blade is set to 90 degrees, and then I'll make a plunge cut through the sheet. I'll only be using this saw in the 90-degree orientation, so I won't need to worry about tilting it. I'm going to use a zip tie to keep the trigger on, and I also need to add some stiffeners to the front and back of this sheet so that it'll stay flat. And luckily I have some scrap wood in my cabinet here that will fit the bill. I'll just locate that and screw it in place. And with the front and back rails added to the top, I wired in a switch. Basically what I did was I cut off the original cord of the saw, and I used the cord from my old table saw to wire into a box that has a regular light switch in there. I want to add one more piece of wood to the bottom here, and that's to mount the switch box on so that it's back behind the front and I can't accidentally turn it on with my knee. Now that I've got basically everything done with the bottom, I can flip it over and get it situated a little bit better on the sawhorses. Since I'm only going to be using this saw to build the other saw, the fence will just be a straight edge that I'm going to clamp onto the top. And to position it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line on the top by putting the straight edge right up against the blade, and that'll give me a 0 reference to go off of. Any scrap of plywood or solid wood that's actually straight will do. And this one I have here is actually my shelf pin jig that I made a few years ago. Before I can start using this seriously, I need to fasten it down to those sawhorses so it doesn't slide off when I'm using it. But in the meantime, I'll just give it a quick try right now to see how it works. That's not bad actually. The saw has lots of power, and when it's up to its full height, it can easily cut through 1.5 inch thick material.